All right, moving on to the next segment of today's show, I decided to talk a little bit about a new segment that is going to be debuting on this show, and I'm going to be doing it every single Monday or Tuesday, whatever show comes first after the NFL Sunday, and it's called 10 Things from the Week. And basically, I'm going to give you guys my 10 biggest takeaways that came to mind from watching the games yesterday all around the league. We're going to get to a couple other football segments in the back end of today's show, but I always think this is a good way to start it off by giving you guys 10 things that really did stand out to me. So, boys, hit the music, and without further ado, here we go. Thought number one, Tom Brady did not look very good. But I'll start panicking about the Bucs if they lose to the Carolina Panthers next week. The Bucs did not look good at all. But I think we have to remember, it's Tom Brady's first game in the new offense, and I'm going to start really panicking if this continues. The Buccaneers' offensive line did not look very good at all, but it was against the New Orleans Saints team playing on the road in a dome. I picked Tampa Bay to win the game before the game started, which didn't obviously turn out too well. I picked the Bucs to win the NFC North in the preseason. I'm not going to change anything away from that, but yesterday was not very good for Tom Brady, and he didn't look good at all. I'll really start panicking once again if they lose to the Carolina Panthers, but all I'm going to say is that was just not a very good start to the season at all for Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got a little bit of a running game involved with Ronald Jones. Their offensive line was not great. Their defense was not great at all. And Tom Brady really did, provide the narrative of, all right, if Jameis Winston is going to throw picks, and even if he does lead the lead in touchdowns, I'd rather have Tom Brady as my quarterback. Well, that wasn't the case yesterday, as Brady did throw 2 interceptions, and it was very weird to see that happen after Tampa Bay scored and took the ball right down the field on the first play of the drive. So a disappointing effort from the Bucs. I'm a little concerned, but I'm not going to start panicking until or if they lose at home next week to the Carolina Panthers. Thought number 2. How about Cam Newton and the New England Patriots? And you guys know, if you listen to this show, I predicted the New England Patriots to win the AFC East in the preseason, and I'm not going anywhere from that prediction. I would rather have Cam Newton as my quarterback over Josh Allen any day of the week, and if you don't believe me, just watch some of the throws Josh Allen made against the New York Jets on Sunday. He had a couple wide open receivers in the end zone that he just flat out missed, including one that really stood out to Dawson Knox, and he's just not a very smart or accurate quarterback. New England's defense looked dialed in yesterday. Love the way Stephon Gilmore played, and you guys know the way it is. I will believe in Bill Belichick until the cows come home. That dude knows how to get a football team ready. They come ready to play every week. And I'm telling you, man, I think Belichick has something up his sleeve with Cam Newton. I think he's been jealous of Coach Harbaugh and the offense they've been running in Baltimore over the last couple of years. And I think Belichick and Josh McDaniels are going to try to turn their playbook specifically to fit the skill set of Cam Newton. And I really can't wait to see how exactly that ends up. People forget how good Cam Newton is. I still think he's a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the league. And the fact that he's on the New England Patriots right now, it's crazy, man. And it's a scary, scary sign for the league. Everyone wants to talk about how all of a sudden the Patriots' reign of winning the AFC East is over. Not so fast. Next week at Seattle is going to be a tough game. There is no doubt about it. I'm not even expecting them to win. But if they could at least show me a competitive effort, if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm really, really optimistic. Observation number 3. How about the Cleveland Browns, man? What an absolute joke. We all remember that last year, the Cleveland Browns were a disaster from the start of the season to the end of the season. And when I say start of the season, I literally mean start of the season, as they got blown out by the Tennessee Titans at home last year on opening day, 43-13. They had Freddie Kitchens as their head coach. He's obviously no longer at the helm. They bring in Kevin Stefanski, and just when you thought it was impossible for Stefanski's coaching debut to go as worse as Freddie Kitchens did, it went much, much worse as the Browns got blown out to the Ravens and lost 38-6. I think we have to have some conversations about Baker Mayfield, man. I just don't know how good this guy really is. Odell Beckham and him do not have any chemistry at all. Something looks off. Baker was force-feeding him the ball. Jarvis Landry did nothing. They couldn't get a running game going. Their offensive line couldn't block, and Lamar Jackson just cooked their defense. The Browns' next 2 games are home against the Bengals and home against the Washington football team. So next 2 games at home. If you don't go 2-0 in this stretch, if I'm a Brown fan, I don't know where to go from here, man. It's been so hard. And once again, it's not like you really realistically expected your team to win yesterday, but at least you wanted to see somewhat of a competitive effort, and it wasn't even close. Baker Mayfield threw a couple picks. Their kicking and special teams was horrendous. They went for a fake punt, which ended up turning into a fumble. And Baltimore and Cleveland yesterday just didn't even look like they were playing the same sport at all. I was really impressed with what I saw from Baltimore, and Cleveland's going to have to get its stuff fixed fast. They're going to need Wills and Conklin to step up on the offensive line. Wills got hurt at the end of the game yesterday, so we'll see how he is, but Cleveland needs to take advantage of their next 2 games. Number 4, what a way for the Detroit Lions to lose, and how about Mitchell Trubisky? I'll start with the Bears. You know, Mitchell Trubisky was awful in the first 3 quarters of this game. And going into the 4th, the Lions were up 23-6, and the Bears found a way to win. Trubisky had 3 touchdowns in the 4th quarter, and I don't know how good he is. I don't think he's that good at all, but what I will say is he at least earned himself the start for next week and deserves credit for making that kind of comeback. I'm still not sold at all that the Bears are going to be any good with Mitch Trubisky as their quarterback. But going to the Lions, what a way to lose, man. They had plenty of opportunities. They missed a field goal. Stafford threw a bad interception, and DeAndre Swift had, which probably is going to be considered the drop of the season. I still don't know how he dropped that ball. And listen to this stat. Since Matt Patricia has taken over the head coaching position in Detroit, the Lions have blown 11 fourth-quarter leads. 11. If I'm Matt Patricia and I'm the Detroit Lions, that's another team, man. I just don't know where I'd go from here. I mean, 11 fourth-quarter leads in 33 games, that's a joke. And the fact that Detroit let Mitch Trubisky come into their house and cook him in the 4th quarter like they did yesterday, that's just awful. And Matt Patricia, he is just a stubborn coach, man. I picked the Lions to be a wild card before the season started, and for the first couple hours of the game yesterday, I was feeling pretty good and feeling pretty confident about that pick, but no, not after the game, man. Matt Patricia, he's stubborn. He doesn't realize when he calls something that isn't going to work, he just calls it again and again and again. And after the game, when asked about the defense and what happened, he said that he's responsible for one of the best defensive play calls in the history of football, which is the Malcolm Butler interception he's referring to. But the bottom line is, how dare you when someone asks you about your defense, how dare you say that you're responsible for that play call 5 years ago when it was Malcolm Butler that broke the route, and you decided to hire the offensive coordinator who's known to be the dumb person who called that play, Darrell Bevell. He's the one that gave the ball to Marshawn Lynch, and not to give the ball to Marshawn Lynch, and Malcolm Butler read the route. So it's not you, buddy. Matt Patricia, if the Lions keep losing, he's not going to have a job for much longer. Thought number 5. How about my Arizona Cardinals? The Cardinals are the funnest team to watch in the NFL. Did you guys see my dude, Kyler Murray, just slinging? And when I say slinging, I mean slinging the ball today on that San Francisco 49er defense. The Cardinals are another team that I picked to make the playoffs before the season started, and I'm feeling pretty good about that pick now. Kyler Murray is one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, and I think considering the fact that he's only in year 2, and he's still, behind the Mahomes and the Watsons and the Lamar Jacksons, I think people underrate him a little bit, but when you look at the young quarterbacks in football, I'm not taking many over Kyler Murray, and this kid is an absolute stud. Jimmy Garoppolo looked a little concerning for the San Francisco 49ers in this game. The question still remains, do you believe in Jimmy Garoppolo to be your franchise quarterback of the future? To be honest, I don't know. But after watching that game yesterday, it's tough to say. He really had to elevate his team, and unfortunately for Jimmy G, he wasn't able to do that. So good for the Cardinals, really impressive win. And when you watch DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray play together, that is just going to be a combination that is going to scare the league for a very, very long time. Super impressive performance by Nuke and the Arizona Cardinals. Thought number 6. How about the Atlanta Falcons? Every year, we hear everyone say, this is the year. They got Matt Ryan. They bring in Todd Gurley, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. The offensive line is finally healthy. They bring in Dante Fowler. Nah, this team is still trash, and I'll never trust them to be good until proven otherwise. Dan Quinn is officially my prediction to be the first coach fired this season. It's going to be either him or Adam Gase. It's pretty 50-50, but I'm going to have to go with Quinn. And I said this towards the back end of last season. A lot of people were high on the Atlanta Falcons this year because, they ended the season last year 6-2 when their head coach Dan Quinn decided, to back away and not call the defensive plays. What team do you have confidence in when their coach says, I think we're going to be better if I do less? That's just not ideal. And this team could have all the talent in the world. They could be at home. There was never a second yesterday that I actually predicted them to beat the Seattle Seahawks. I'll never trust Atlanta for one bit until proven otherwise. And they still have the talent to be really good, especially in a loaded NFC. It's going to be really tough for Atlanta to do anything, I think, until they at least get rid of their coach. He should have been fired a long, long time ago. As for Seattle, that was an MVP kind of performance by Russell Wilson. I expected him to be in the MVP conversation before the season started, and that was another one that looked pretty good yesterday. Metcalf was making plays. I like Tyler Lockett. It looked like, to me, finally Pete Carroll realized that he has a guy that's going to be a future Hall of Famer at quarterback, and he was willing to build a game plan around him. That was the first time I've seen Pete Carroll do that in a while. I'm very high on Seattle, especially watching San Francisco yesterday. I'm higher. I feel good about my Seattle pick to win the NFC West. So LOL Falcons, and I was just super impressed with the Seahawks. That's number 6. Number 7, general managers and executives tank on the field, not players. And the Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday were on Monday, were a prime example of that. Number 1, I've said this a lot about Gardner Minshew, that if you were just to look at the numbers of his rookie year and the basics, there would have been many teams that would have signed up for that rookie season from their first-round pick quarterback. The problem is, I don't think the Jaguars are giving him a fair shot to succeed. And still, he's making them look foolish. His performance yesterday against a good Indianapolis Colts defense, when their backs were against the wall, they were losing most of the game. That was a really impressive performance from Gardner Minshew. And you could take all the talent away from this guy, or really any other team. The players on the field are trying to win. And I liked what I saw from Myles Jack and Josh Allen and DJ Chark. I don't think the Jaguars, I think Minshew could be a guy there. And everyone was pegging them, including me, to be the worst team in football, and I got why. Actively, they were trying to lose. But you guys realize, it's the players on the field that we're talking about here. They don't try to lose. Look at the Miami Dolphins last year and how far they came from what they were doing early in the season. I think when you look at this team, Jacksonville deserves some credit for not giving up, and they'll be a pesky out in more games than you would think. As for the Colts, really disappointing effort, man. I was high on this team in the beginning of the season, or right now, before the season. I predicted them to win the AFC South, and Phillip Rivers, he looked kind of like Tom Brady. He just looked done. And I said it. Phillip Rivers, towards the back end of last year, really all of last year, looked washed. And the reason why I expected this to work out with the Indianapolis Colts was just because of the fact that he had so much talent around him and a very good offensive line, and it's just not a very good start at all if you can't beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. Indianapolis has Minnesota at home next week. Battle between two 0-1 teams. Super fascinating matchup to watch. Speaking of Minnesota, that's a good leeway into this. How about Aaron Rodgers? That was the best game I've seen him play in a very, very long time. Probably the last 3 years. And he was in MVP form yesterday. Some of the throws this guy makes, man, you just forget how talented he is. We could talk about Pat Mahomes. We could talk about Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson. And trust me, all of those guys are phenomenal and could really play. But at the same time, there's nothing like watching Aaron Rodgers, man. There's really nothing like it. And it's a shame that he doesn't have more than one Super Bowl in his room right now. You know, he would have loved to have a little more. But I think this Green Bay team, sneakily, could be in that mix. I still believe in the Packers defense. They were a good unit last year. And if Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams are going to play like that, with the running game in Aaron Jones and a decent offensive line, I like this Packer team. I predicted them to win the NFC North before the season started, but I wasn't feeling too confident. Let's see what these guys could do. At Detroit, at home next week, you start off 2-0, and you're in business. And the thing is this. I said on the show multiple times, last year, the Packers were a fraud 13-3. They didn't deserve to be that good and really benefited from a good schedule. But watching them yesterday, that looked like a really good football team. And that looked like a football team that could have knocked last year's Green Bay team out of the water. You hope Rodgers and Matt LaFleur gain a little more chemistry, gain a little bit more of a feel for each other in year two. But after watching the Vikings, Lions, and Bears yesterday, I've came to one conclusion, and that is the NFC North is Aaron Rodgers' division until proven otherwise. Moving on to observation number 9. Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson are now 14-14 in their last 28 games, and I think the NFC East may be a little more open than I thought. That was an embarrassing performance by the Eagles on Sunday, man. The fact that they were up 17-0 and let Washington come back and score 27 consecutive points, that just can't happen. I know Philadelphia has been hit with the injury bug early, especially on the offensive line, but I hate to say it, it's not an excuse because it just happens every single year. This team cannot stay healthy. And Carson Wentz, you guys know I love him. I believe in him. I think he could be one of the better quarterbacks in the league, but he was not good at all on Sunday and needs to be better. He didn't really have his weapons to show him either. Besides Dallas Goedert, I liked what he did, but as someone who picked Philadelphia to win the NFC East, it's interesting because since Nick Foles won that Super Bowl, Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson together in games that they've played are 14-14. And that's a surprising stat. Last year, the Eagles lost during Week 1 to the Miami Dolphins, which would put them, Week 14, I believe, to the Miami Dolphins, which put them at 4-7 on the season, and they ended up winning 5 consecutive games in the NFC East. So I'm not that concerned about Philadelphia yet, but they have to be better. The fact that they let the Washington football team do that, that's unacceptable. They need their offensive line to be better, and they need their defense to be better, and they need their quarterback to be better. And if you can't beat Washington when you're up 17-0, that's a big, big concern. And when you look at the NFC East, Washington can make some noise, man. Their pass rush could really play. I loved what I saw from Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, and those guys. We're going to talk about Dallas next on the next segment. And even the Giants on Monday Night, man. I know they didn't win, but I really do like what I saw from Daniel Jones. So the NFC East, I think Dallas and Philly maybe are a little closer to New York and Washington than we expected. I'm not, going to start panicking yet, but I did find that interesting that Wentz and Peterson now 14-14 in their last 28 games together. Moving on to the final observation. How about my guy Joe Exotic? Shout out to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals because, look, it would have been very easy for them to just lose the game yesterday and just, say, look, the Chargers are the more talented team. They're the more superior team. We got a rookie quarterback. We have no shot here. And the Bengals came to play. I thought they were going to win. They were winning for most of the first half, and then the Chargers really took over in the second half. But watching Joe Burrow and the poise he showed on that last final drive, super impressive. He looked like he's been in the league for years. And the AJ Green push-off, we were going to be debating that for a long time. I think it was a push-off, but I would have understood if the refs did or did not call it. The bottom line is, Joe Burrow, the fact that he even made that throw and put the ball in that specific spot, just super, super impressive. And I think when you look at the Cincinnati Bengal team, they got some weapons around them. You surround a good young quarterback with AJ Green and Joe Mixon and T. Higgins and John Ross, who isn't very good, I get it. But they at least have some playmakers on that team. I think the Bengals' offensive line needs to improve, obviously along with their defense. But Joe Burrow looked like he belonged yesterday, and his poise and his awareness on that final drive, fitting the ball through some tight windows, I was really impressed. And if Randy Bullock can make a field goal, the game goes to overtime, and maybe the Bengals win. I wasn't impressed with the Chargers at all. They play Kansas City this week. I think they're Tyrod against Pat Mahomes. It's kind of just a no match, no win situation for the Chargers. I wasn't impressed with them at all. I still think they're about a 6-win football team, but the Bengals could maybe be a little better than we expected. And they have Cleveland on the road on Thursday Night Football next week. And if I'm a Browns fan, I got to be honest, watching Joe Burrow, I'm feeling pretty nervous.